After Joseph Smith secured the gold plates, his life became a constant struggle to protect them. The moment the news got out, treasure seekers, former associates, and even curious neighbors were relentless. They tried everything to steal the plates. Imagine the pressure knowing you hold something sacred, something ancient, while people are digging up your yard and ambushing you on the road. Joseph had to be clever, constantly moving the plates. He hid them under the hearthstone of his family's fireplace, in a hollowed-out log in the woods, and even in a barrel of beans. Day and night, he lived with this threat, never fully letting his guard down. But the physical danger was only half the battle. Now that he had the plates, how was he supposed to translate them? He had been given what the ancient record called the Urim and Thummim, two seer stones set in a silver bow, which he described as looking like a pair of ancient spectacles. But he had little to no idea how to actually use them. The task felt immense, almost impossible for a young, uneducated farm boy. The weight of this divine responsibility was crushing. He had the tools, he had the record, but the path forward was completely dark. The work was at a standstill, and Joseph felt deeply overwhelmed. Then, a man named Martin Harris enters the story. Martin wasn't just anyone. He was a respected and wealthy landowner in Palmyra, known for his integrity. He was also significantly older than Joseph and had a reputation to protect. He was naturally skeptical of Joseph's claims. Who wouldn't be? A young man claiming an angel gave him golden plates? It sounded unbelievable, but Martin was a sincere man. He didn't just dismiss it. He investigated. He interviewed the Smith family and others who had witnessed strange events. Most importantly, he prayed. He asked God directly if this work was true. And in response, he received a powerful spiritual confirmation, a feeling so strong he could no longer deny that Joseph's mission was from God. This conviction changed everything. Martin decided to put his money where his faith was. He gave Joseph $50, a huge sum at the time, which enabled Joseph and his wife, Emma, to finally escape the constant persecution in Palmyra. They moved over 100 miles away to Harmony, Pennsylvania, to live with Emma's family. The hope was that here, in peace and quiet, the real work of translation could finally begin. But Martin's involvement didn't stop there. His rational mind still needed more proof. He asked Joseph for a copy of some of the characters from the plates. With this paper in hand, Martin traveled to New York City to consult with the leading language experts of his day, including the famous Professor Charles Anthon at Columbia College. According to Martin's account, Professor Anthon initially confirmed that the characters were authentic and the translation was correct. But when he learned the record came from an angel, he tore up his certificate of authenticity, saying he could not read a sealed book. Other scholars dismissed it as well. For many, this would have been the end of their belief. But for Martin Harris, it was the opposite. He returned to Joseph more convinced than ever. He had seen the wisdom of the world fail, and it solidified his faith that this work was not of man, but of God. Back in Harmony, with Martin's financial support securing them a place to live, Joseph began the translation in earnest. His wife Emma served as his very first scribe. What she witnessed during this time was nothing short of miraculous. Joseph would sit for hours, dictating the text of an ancient record. Emma would write as he spoke. She later testified that he dictated word for word, hour after hour, without any books, notes, or manuscripts to consult. He couldn't have had anything hidden. If they were interrupted by a visitor or had to stop for a meal, he would pick up right where he left off, without even asking to have the last sentence read back to him. Emma knew her husband. She knew he was a man of limited education who could barely write a coherent letter. Yet here he was, producing a complex, interwoven narrative filled with intricate stories and profound doctrine. Seeing this firsthand, day after day, solidified Emma's faith. She knew with a certainty that never left her, that her husband was translating by the power of God. After some time, Martin Harris traveled to Harmony to take over as the primary scribe. He was mesmerized by the process, writing furiously as Joseph dictated what would become the first 116 pages of the manuscript. But Martin was facing intense pressure back home. His wife, Lucy, was deeply skeptical and ridiculed him for investing his time and money in what she considered a fraud. She demanded proof. Martin became desperate to convince her. He began to plead with Joseph, begging him to let him take the manuscript home to show his wife and a few select family members. He was convinced that if they could just see the pages, they would believe. Joseph, feeling for his friend, asked God for permission. The answer was a clear and firm no. The manuscript was not to leave his possession. But Martin was relentless. He wouldn't take no for an answer. He pleaded again. Joseph inquired of the Lord a second time. Again, the answer was no. Martin was distraught, and his persistence wore Joseph down. Feeling immense pressure, Joseph agreed to ask a third time. This time, the answer was different. The Lord said that if Martin would agree to a strict oath to only show it to a handful of specific people and keep it locked up otherwise, then Joseph was permitted to let him go with it. Joseph, against his better judgment, gave in. He made Martin swear the solemn oath, and Martin left for Palmyra, manuscript in hand. But almost as soon as Martin was gone, Joseph felt a dreadful sense of foreboding. The angel Moroni appeared and took the Urim and Thummim from him. It was a clear sign of divine disapproval. Joseph was left in darkness, filled with anxiety. During the weeks Martin was gone, a personal tragedy struck Joseph and Emma. Emma went into a difficult and prolonged labor, giving birth to their first child, a son. Heartbreakingly, the baby died shortly after birth. The ordeal was so severe that Emma herself hovered near death for weeks. Joseph was completely consumed with caring for his wife, his grief and worry pushing all thoughts of the manuscript from his mind. Once Emma was finally out of danger, his anxiety about Martin and the pages returned with a vengeance. He hadn't heard anything. He told Emma he had to go to his parents' home in Manchester, near Palmyra, to find out what had happened. When Joseph arrived, he found the Harris family at breakfast, but Martin was nowhere to be seen. Joseph's presence seemed to cast a pall over the room. He refused to eat, his voice trembling as he asked for Martin. When Martin finally entered the room, he looked like a broken man. He walked past Joseph, sat down at the table, and dropped his head into his hands. "Martin, have you lost that manuscript?" Joseph cried out. Martin raised his head and confessed, through tears, "Yes, it is gone, and I know not where." The truth came out: he had broken his promise, showing the pages to more people than he was allowed, and someone had stolen them. At that moment, Joseph Smith collapsed. He cried out, all is lost, what shall I do? I have sinned." He believed he had failed God, betrayed his trust, and that the work was now destroyed. He felt he had lost his soul. This devastating chapter in the story teaches a powerful and sobering lesson. Even those called of God are human and fully accountable for their choices. Fearing man more than God can lead to disastrous consequences, and good intentions can't erase disobedience to a divine command. Joseph learned this in the most painful way possible. But the story doesn't end with failure. This profound loss was not the end of God's work. Instead, it became a crucial turning point. It led Joseph to a deeper humility, a stronger resolve, and a more careful and disciplined approach to his calling. It proved that while humans may stumble and make terrible mistakes, God's purposes cannot be frustrated. His work will always move forward. Thanks for watching. If you found this story meaningful, please like and subscribe for more.